Imagine two generals poised on opposite hills, each knowing a surprise attack could end their fragile peace. But neither strikes first because the fear of mutual destruction keeps them stuck in a tense standoff. What invisible rules govern their moves? Thomas Schelling dives deep into this dance of fear, bluff, and calculation, the very heart of conflict strategy. But here's the twist. What if random chance and communication could change everything? Hold that thought. Negotiation isn't about polite talks. It's a calculated game where threats and promises are weapons. Schelling reveals how real-world bargains mirror high-stakes poker, where bluffing can save lives or trigger disasters. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy and Khrushchev faced a nuclear standoff that felt like brinkmanship on a knife's edge. Schelling unpacks how Kennedy's naval blockade was a carefully calibrated message, tough enough to pressure, but restrained enough to avoid instant war. The world watched as each leader bargained silently with fear and faith, testing who would blink first and how hard they'd push. Think of game theory as a dance where each step anticipates the partner's next move, not random but a carefully crafted choreography. Schelling shows how in conflict decisions aren't isolated, they interlock. Like chess pieces locked in duel, players predict, react, and maneuver, making strategy less about victory itself and more about shaping the opponent's choices. The magic of credible threats lies in their clarity and commitment. If a threat smells like hot air, it's disregarded, but if it's clear and believable, say a general who's visibly ready to launch, the opponent hesitates. Schelling argues that this edges conflicts toward peaceful resolution by stabilizing expectations. When you know the cost of escalation, you think twice before crossing lines. How do you send a message without words? Schelling's genius lies in showing that actions can enforce agreements, communicate strength, or even change the rules, turning the fog of war into strategic clarity. One classic story involves a commander who burned bridges behind his army, literally to show there was no turning back. This dramatic commitment made retreat impossible and forced soldiers to fight harder. Schelling calls these strategic moves, where you change your own options to influence the enemy, kind of like locking yourself in a room to force your hand. Not all communication uses words. Sometimes silence or the timing of an act speaks volumes. Schelling explains how delays, standoffs, or sudden movements can signal resolve or bluff. It's like in poker when you stare down your opponent and don't bet. Your silence can scream confidence or weakness depending on the context. Random elements like flipping a coin can make threats unpredictable and therefore more intimidating. Schelling highlights how adding chance forces opponents to hedge their bets. Imagine threatening to launch missiles only half the time. That uncertainty can paralyze an opponent's decision-making, twisting logic through probability and fear. Fear of surprise attack is the ghost-haunting military strategy. Schelling explores how distrust fuels endless preparations and how sometimes leaving things to chance can be the safest bet. During World War II, generals on both sides worried what the other might do next, especially surprise attacks like Pearl Harbor. Schelling points out that distrust becomes self-fulfilling, each side arms more heavily expecting betrayal, which itself can provoke preemption. It's a tense spiral where fear of surprise locks enemies into constant readiness. Disarmament talks face a paradox. Giving up weapons depends on trusting the other side won't cheat, but mutual distrust sabotages this. Schelling reveals how agreements collapse without credible verification, turning noble peace efforts into strategic minefields, where each concession feels like handing your enemy a loaded gun. Leaving something to chance can be a strategic masterstroke. Schelling discusses how commanders may randomize patrols or launch times to confuse opponents. By making your defense unpredictable, you create a moving target. This calculated uncertainty keeps enemies guessing, turning the fog of war into a shield rather than a hazard. Recall those generals on the hills, frozen by fear and calculation. Schelling's insights unravel why they wait, and how subtle signals, commitments, and a dash of randomness keep peace balanced on a knife's edge. Next time you face a tough negotiation or conflict, try mixing your moves with honest signals and a little unpredictability. Sometimes, not knowing your next step is exactly the power you need. Subscribe for more book summaries like this one.